Everyone's cheering that Cardano just turned bullish, but what if we're still standing outside the stadium and the real game hasn't even kicked off? So I just spent the last 48 hours glued to 𝗕𝗔𝗡𝗪 charts, my coffee going cold while candles flickered and Twitter exploded with rocket ship emojis. Everyone keeps shouting bull run, yet something felt off, like showing up at a surprise party only to realize the guest of honor hasn't arrived. Now that itch sent me digging into a brand new risk model, and what I found completely flipped my perspective. So hang with me for a few minutes, because by the end of this story you're going to know why I'm convinced Cardano's headline rally is just another trailer and the main feature is still loading. Picture this: Monday morning, price hovering near 70 cents. The vibe on X, which we all know really as Twitter, is a weird kind of mix of swagger and anxiety, right? Memes about moon missions mashed together with doom posting every time 𝗕𝗔𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 sneezes 0.5 cent lower, right? Then comes that kind of mini panic dip to 64 cents on May 6th, right? Now I can't lie, my phone, it lit up kind of like Vegas at midnight. Friends pinged me, bro, it's all over, should I bail? Instead of kind of tossing quick hot takes back, I zoomed out, literally, right? Pulling up a multi-year chart so wide that it felt like an ancient scroll. That's when I stumbled upon Dan, a custom kind of risk model. Now, risk models usually sound like the boring part of the party, right? People whispering about probability curves while everyone else is dancing. But Dan's gauge is different, right? Imagine a kind of speedometer, right, where 0 means that you're at a kind of grandma doing 10 miles an hour, right, on a Sunday drive, and 100 means that you're hitting kind of warp speed without a seatbelt, right? Cardano's long-term risk score right now, 37. So dead center of the kind of moderate buy zone. It's not screaming euphoria, not whispering despair, but calmly kind of pointing to opportunity. Now for context, back in 2017 and again in 2021, the same dial crept into the 50s and 60s before 𝗕𝗔𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 rocketed from pocket change to $1 or even higher, and later to $3, right? Now in other words, right, 37 isn't late to the party. It's actually the pre-party playlist. And so here I am, coffee finally reheated, staring at the 37 like it's a cosmic wink. Could it be that everyone's chanting bull run is actually early, so early that the confetti cannons aren't even loaded yet? Now I pulled up the historical risk chart, those kind of red zones from past cycles glowing like overheat warnings, and sure enough, each time the risk gauge left the 30s and marched into the crimson, price went parabolic, and then eventually crashed from exhaustion. Right now, though, we're south of that danger zone by a mile, but charts alone don't pay the bills. Real market moves happen where technicals meet emotional, right? Cue analyst Ali Martinez, who slapped a 4-hour candlestick on X that basically is a tightrope, right? Parallel lines slanting downhill, squinting and squeezing price like a kind of panini press, if you will. Now, those 2 weeks, or at least for the last 2 weeks, 𝗕𝗔𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 has ping-ponged between those barriers, right? Ping up to 74 cents and pong down to 65 cents. Repeat. Now, each failed breakout kind of felt like a prank, right? Price touches resistance, everyone cheers, and then gravity smirks and drags it back down. Now, the latest kind of tap lands, right around that kind of 71 cents, although I think at the point of recording this video, it's actually a little bit higher and we may actually finally have that breakout. And of course, I'm going to talk about what Ali Martinez has been talking about. So Ali's takeaway is quite simple, right? Break that upper rail and, convincingly, let's say 80 cents flashes green on the radar. But here's the twist. Technical ceilings usually scare traders. Now they're like glass walls in a maze, but 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘's kind of breakout pending sketch with Dan's risk still low dial, and suddenly that ceiling looks like reinforced glass and more like kind of tissue paper waiting for the first gust of volume. Now, it reminds me of those kind of escape rooms where the obvious door is locked, but the hidden passage pops open once you kind of place the final puzzle piece in. Now, Cardano's puzzle piece might just be a tiny spark of network activity, and guess what? That spark is already growing. Into the block, on-chain metrics quietly reveals a pulse beneath the price. New addresses up nearly 5% in the last 7 days. Active addresses up almost 12%. Zero balance wallets, well, those little ghosts that often belong to kind of returning users, jumping more than 12% too. So let's think about, or think of blockchain like a theme park then, right? Price is the ticket booth people see from the highway, but the on-chain stats are the foot traffic inside. More footprints on the paths means longer queues for the rides, and historically, that queue predicts a price spike better than any influencer's hopium tweet. Let's go ahead and peel back the psychology, right? People crave confirmation, where ADA, at least when ADA kind of crawled from the kind of 64 cents back to 72 cents within 48 hours, it kind of soothed nerves the same way of finding your phone in the couch cushions, calms a mini heart attack, right? But humans also suffer recency biases, right? If the last thing that we remember is ADA falling at 74 cents, well, we assume the next attempt will fail too. And that's kind of where the risk model is like a kind of friend grabbing your shoulders and turning you towards the bigger picture. It whispers, hey, historically, these quiet zones are golden, right? Don't fall asleep just because the fireworks aren't popping yet. Okay, let me rewind back to my own rookie mistake back in 2020. Back then, I ignored Cardano under 10 cents because it felt stuck, right? Risk charts looked tame, social buzz was minimal, and I convinced myself that there were hotter tickets elsewhere. Right? You know what happened next? ADA sprinted to $3 and I watched from the bleachers, right? Popcorn in hand, face in palm. The lesson? Boredom often precedes boom. Now today's 37 score gives me deja vu, but this time I'm not hitting the snooze button. Now, that's a story that I would like to tell you, but I wasn't that guy. I actually did buy Cardano at 8 cents before that big boom to the upside, and I'm glad that I didn't have this scenario. And yet, there's still a tangible challenge here, right? That stubborn, descending channel. It's kind of like ADA is tapping in an airport moving walkway that's going in the wrong direction, right? No matter how hard price jogs, the belt drags it back. Now, traders see resistance at 72 and 74 cents as a kind of brick wall. Breakouts need volume cavalry, and recent spikes haven't hit game-changing just yet. Now, the problem then, it isn't whether Cardano has potential, it's whether traders believe it's worth lighting the fuse now rather than waiting for Ethereum or Bitcoin to blink first. And speaking of Ethereum, Dan's model kind of gives Ethereum a risk score of 24. It's lower than ADA's, suggesting Ether might be early in its own cycle. But numbers alone don't capture structural nuances. Cardano's thick kind of pipeline of upgrades, remember Hydra scaling and Mithril snapshots, adds fundamental fuel to the raw risk score that can't quantify, right? It's kind of like comparing two runners, right? Heart rates, without noting that one of them is wearing an ankle weight that comes off mid-race, right? Now, once those weights drop, think new sidechains, DApp growth, interoperability bridges, ADA's stride, it lengthens. All right, enough theory. Let's zoom into the potential scenarios. If price punches past the channel lines and grabs 80 cents, FOMO tweets will explode like popcorn kernels. Historically, once ADA claims a psychological round number, slippage towards the next dime steps accelerates, right? 90 cents drags eyeballs, $1 becomes clickbait gold, and suddenly mainstream finance outlets that forgot Cardano existed dust off their 2021 headlines. Smart contract rivals surges, right? That media kind of echo chamber can ignite a rally faster than any single whale wallet. But markets, they punish impatience. Picture ADA flirting with the resistance, right? 72, 73 cents, then kind of faking out and dunking to 65 cents again. Shorts will crow and memes will of course mock, and sentiment might turn sour. This is where strategy beats emotion. Like Dan insists on planning an exit even while sounding bullish, right? He's like that friend who maps out emergency exits before the concert starts, because eventually risk gauges turn crimson, right? And if you're still dancing when the music stops, you're left paying for overpriced merch that you didn't want. And so, what about whale behavior? Well, on-chain trackers, clusters of mid-sized wallets layering bids in the kind of high 60s. It's kind of subtle accumulation, like kind of squirrels stashing nuts before winter. Now, they're not splashing enough to move price 10% overnight. They're nibbling patiently, betting the market will reward stealth. Right? Retail, on the other hand, is allergic to boredom. They pile in when ADA posts back-to-back green daily candles. Right? Ironically, whales often sell into that excitement. So if you're retail, copying kind of whales' patience using dollar cost averaging strategies, for weeks, that actually may be the more sensible play. So let's talk catalyst then, right? The broader kind of crypto tide usually rises with Bitcoin kind of halving hype, ETFs, or kind of macro liquidity shifts. But Cardano owns some unique levers, if you will. Upcoming Chang hard fork components, itching closer, governance features, getting fleshed out, stablecoin projects like USDA, and each of these kind of milestones is a potential confetti cannon, right? Remember, ADA hits its all-time high before native DeFi even existed on chain, right? Imagine what network metrics could look like once a lot of those DeFi rails hum with real volume. And there's the network effect kicker, right? More builders equals more users equals more transactions feed staking rewards, which tightens circulating supply as delegators lock coins. Those mechanics, right, they become a flywheel that risk models struggle to reflect in real time. Which is kind of why the 37 score excites me a little bit, right? It implies that the flywheel hasn't even spun up, and when it does, risk can climb swiftly, and those who wait for the all clear might actually catch only the kind of tail end of this parabolic arc. Okay, so let me ground this in with a personal story then, right? I remember sitting in a cramped studio apartment in the 2017 bubble, refreshing CoinMarketCap like it was Instagram, terrified to buy ADA at, a fraction of a cent or so, right? Because it kind of held or had kind of already doubled in price, right? Someone wiser told me real bubbles feel ridiculous long before they top. Now, I didn't listen. I waited for a dip that never came. The result? I learned that markets don't send formal invitations. They just open the door a crack, then slam it shut when everyone notices. Now, today, the door is ajar again. The risk model is the polite note taped to it. Come in if you dare, but know your exit. And so, where does that leave us now? Well, price hovering around 70 something cents, risk gauge humming at 37, descending channel, tension tightening like a guitar string, on-chain growth quietly booming. To me, that comparison, it kind of feels less like a finished symphony, I can't even talk today, symphony, and more like an orchestra kind of tuning instruments. Now, the crescendo, of course, is the spine-tingling breakout past 80 cents. It hasn't hit, but you can, of course, sense it in the kind of small stuff, the uptick in the dresses, the impatient candles kind of brushing resistance. The analysts nudging charts on X saying any day now. If you've listened this far, then you're probably weighing whether to wait for confirmed breakout fireworks or to scoop up a few ADA tickets while the concession stand is still running early bird prices. Now, I can't make that call for you, but I can share my approach. Layering small buys when the noise kind of dies down, setting clear targets when the price score turns scarlet, and, above all, writing rules on paper before FOMO can scribble over them. Oh, and keeping one eye on that Discord that we run. There's a link in the description down below. It's completely free, full of fellow crypto nerds who will happily slap you with memes if you start revenge trading at 3 AM. Look, the real magic of a bull market isn't the 10-second green candle that you screenshot for bragging rights. It's the months of conviction that preceded it, right? The boring sideways grinds where you quietly position yourself while TikTok influencers chase the next shiny object, right? Cardano's story right now is exactly that. Understated, I should say, and statistically favorable, historically early. If the model is accurate, right, we're not witnessing late stage hype. We're actually stepping into Act 1. The curtains haven't even fully risen yet. And so the next time that someone asks if the ADA bull run has already kind of left the station, just smile and show them the kind of boarding pass marked risk score 37, right? Because sometimes the loudest part of the journey is the silence before the engine roars.